So the big question, why do we do apprenticeships? What benefit does it bring for the employers? And most of you will be aware that if you're a large employer, you have to pay into a levy pot. It's the law. It comes straight out of your payroll. And if you don't actually use that money, you lose it. So, on a money kind of side of it, you might as well use apprenticeships because you've actually paid for them already. But there's a huge recruitment crisis. Everybody's suffering with it. And we can use this new apprenticeship to actually develop people into the industry. The license, everybody knows the SIA licenses, the security guardian one, the door supervisor one, the CCTV one. It's all been in place. It's been in place for a long time and it's still there. But actually, that's just an entry requirement training. This apprenticeship is actually a whole year long and it really encourages competency over the whole 12 months. It's really practical. Research shows that we know that this is a preferred method of learning for lots and lots of security staff. They get to have their knowledge, but also their skills and their behaviour trained and developed. There's also a benefit for employers because people are starting a 12-month apprenticeship scheme. Hopefully, when they are in this apprenticeship, they won't be looking for other jobs, so it should improve retention rates. And we know that school leavers, college leavers quite often look at apprenticeship routes. That's how the construction industry has recruited. And now we are able to actually offer that same opportunity. We've got a proper recognised apprenticeship in the security industry that we can now start recruiting younger people and people who are less experienced in the industry. So definitely some really good benefits for employers out there. Thank you. Now I need to introduce Annette. Annette works for Grey Seal Academy and they're a training provider that's delivering the apprenticeship.
Oh, thank you, Pauline. So my name's Annette and I'm from Grey Seal Academy, and today I'm going to cover with you the programme content, what's in the programme, how it's delivered, how apprentices are supported and how they're assessed on programme. So what's actually in the apprenticeship? So this is a bundle of qualifications or of courses. So starting off with the apprenticeship standard, that contains all the knowledge, the skills and the behaviours that your professional security operative needs to be good at their job role. So looking at it academically, the level 2 is equivalent to, say, GCSE. We're working at that kind of level. Work-wise, it's really, as Pauline said, it's somebody at that entry level. So they could be on day one. They could have been with you for 6 months or for a year. However long they're with you for, they've still got plenty to learn, and that's going to make the course worthwhile for them to do. In addition to the standard, there's also maths and English. That's mandatory at level 1 and optional at level 2. Again, to give you an idea of kind of where that's pitched. Academically, we're looking level 1 is just below a pass at GCSE. And level 2 is kind of pass level at GCSE. But they can't really be compared to GCSEs because they're much smaller. So the content that's in a functional skill qualification is more what we need every day at work, at home, that sort of thing. There's also another component, which is that emergency first aid at work or approved equivalent. So that's that 1-day first aid course we're all pretty familiar with. So just going back to that apprenticeship standard, that's been made up of kind of 2 main parts in a way. So you've got the core knowledge, skills and behaviours, which I'm going to show you a little bit more about on the next slide. But also, in addition to that, it's got 4 pathways. So what you'll do is everybody will do the core modules, and then you'll pick one pathway, and that's going to be related to the job role that apprentice is actually doing. So you'll pick that pathway at enrolment. And just to note, you can't change the pathway once it's been selected, and you can't pick more than one. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the pathways in a moment, so if we can look at the core modules. So here are the core modules within the apprenticeship. So these are the ones that everybody is going to be doing. So that's communication and customer service, security operations, technology and equipment, legislation, regulation and procedures, and incident response. So these ones everyone will do. We can look at the next slide. That's going to show us the pathways. So what will happen is the core, then you'll pick one pathway and add the set of modules that goes with that particular pathway. So if you're operational security, you're going to do security patrol, access and searching, and incident response. So it might be worth noting that some of these do have the same titles, but the content will actually differ depending and relating to that particular pathway that apprentice is on. So you've got your core, everyone will do one pathway added together. That's your full apprenticeship in your knowledge and skills. Then, if you remember, it was knowledge, skills and behaviours. So the behaviours have been selected by the Trailblazer, and these are really weaved through the whole programme. So they'll appear in many of those knowledge, skills and behaviours that we looked at before. And there's some great behaviours in there that you're going to want your apprentice to be performing by the end of the programme. So things like vigilant, professional, calm, problem solving and so on. So you can see all the behaviours there. Thank you. So as you can see, an awful lot to get in. So how are they going to actually do that? So they're allocated off the job learning hours. That's an average of 6 hours per week over the course of the programme that they need to dedicate to learning something. So that could be to qualify for being off the job learning, it needs to be new knowledge, skills or behaviours in usual paid time and relevant to the apprenticeship. So what does it actually look like in practice? So it's really any time that they're spending with the trainer, of course, you'd expect that, but it's also some activities that they're going to be doing at the workplace. So that could include things like shadowing. So by that we mean if you get a new starter, particularly at entry level, you're probably going to put them with a more experienced person, either in that task or a more experienced person overall, and they're going to kind of show them the ropes. So that's what we mean by shadowing. There might be employer training courses that you're offering. So they could be online, could be face-to-face. If they're relevant to the apprenticeship, they can count towards that 6 hours. There'll also be research to do. So that might be looking at their own employers' policies and procedures. And also it could be looking external, might be legislation, might be keeping up with what's going on within the sector. And assignment writing is kind of all their portfolio building. So that really covers things like they will do some written work. They might write up tasks that they've been doing. They might write into workbooks or various different things. But they also might do photographs and describe what they're doing. They might do videos of different skills or tasks that they're doing. So it's portfolio building. And then towards the end, they're going to want to look back over the course of their programme and revise to put themselves in a good position for endpoint assessment. So all of that could count towards their 6 hours of off the job per week. So how do employers support apprentices? So of course it has to be paid for, and Pauline touched upon this earlier. So the maximum funding band is £6,000, and just to be clear, that will include the training provider plus the endpoint assessment cost as well. So of course that's going to come through your apprenticeship levy if you are a levy paying employer. If you're not paying into the apprenticeship levy, then you'll need to make an employer contribution of 5%. So that's a maximum contribution of £300. And then the rest is government funded. So the other things that they'll do is that 6 hours per week, which we spoke about. And they'll also do a tripartite review every 10 to 12 weeks. So this is basically a review meeting with the employer, which will be the line manager, the learner and the trainer. So they'll get together, they'll look back, are there any issues that need sorting out, what kind of progress are we making, and so on. But we'll also look forward to say, right, well, this is a reminder of what we're going to be covering over the next couple of months. Are there any tasks that you can give them that's going to help them put their learning into practice? So, you know, we'll be looking at shadowing, at tasks and so on. Which kind of brings me on to the next point. It may be necessary to expand the apprentice's role in order to get in all the tasks that are required by the apprenticeship. So obviously the apprentice will need to practice tasks and skills in order to become competent.
I've got one up there. We're all right to start with, so take them.
Okay, so yeah, they may need to have to expand the apprenticeship or the tasks within, say, the job description or that apprentice's job role, so that they can practice the skills that they're learning about on the knowledge side of things. So normally a training provider will be able to help you to do that. They'll need access to a PC or a laptop at work, a nice quiet space for completing the apprenticeship work and taking training calls and so on. And in an ideal world, a mentor or a buddy, ideally someone security competent, but somebody with a supportive nature within the workplace. So how does the training provider support the apprentice? So the trainer really has been there, done that. So they've done the job role up to at least supervisory, probably beyond. So they know what they're doing, they've done the job, they know what they're talking about. And they use that experience to train the apprentice. So, and that could be, as I said, a whole mixture of different things. It could be site visits for practical skills. It could be teaching, workshop, coaching. It might be in groups. It might be one-to-one. It's online, it's in person. And most training providers will use a mixture of all of these things to deliver the course. They will build a portfolio, as I mentioned, throughout the programme. That could be online. It could be paper-based. They'll do those 10 to 12 week reviews, and also ongoing communication with, say, L&D, HR, and that's more about the cohorts. It's kind of an overview of progress, whether that's one person or more than one person. And then they're going to do mocks towards the end of the programme and make sure we give some really solid feedback to put them in a good position. Thank you. So what happens at the end? When we've got to the end, we've taught everything and they've developed everything and they've got all their knowledge, skills and behaviours. We get together with the same three that do those tripartite meetings. So it's the learner, the line manager and the trainer. We'll get together and make sure everything's been done. They're all happy that that apprentice can now move on to their endpoint assessment. There are a couple of other things that need to be ticked off and kind of take you back to that first slide. They need to have achieved 12 months on programme as a minimum. They need to have achieved their emergency first aid certificate and also their level 1 maths and English. Incidentally, if they have already got these qualifications and they can show evidence of that, then they could be exempt. And they will be asked for that during the enrolment phase. And also need to have evidence that off-the-job learning of 6 hours per week on average throughout the programme. That's it for me. Thank you for listening. And I'd like to pass on to Dolly.
Thank you, Annette, and thank you, Pauline. So far, you've really contextualised it. So the purpose of my section is to kind of bring to life what you've heard. So Pauline told us about how it came around, and to be honest, I've been in Mitie for circa 20 months. So this Trailblazer, we joined the Trailblazer well before my time, and I've got some colleagues that have been here since inception. And following 3 years of really hard graft, we really wanted to leverage it. And I want to share a bit of a case study of how this has impacted our business in a really positive way. And also as well, why we were so heavily involved with the Trailblazer group, and then share one of our colleague stories. So this apprenticeship standard, one of the core standout bits is about clearly identifying the career paths which our learners go through. For the first time in the industry, people have got a clear entry point, which means that they can navigate and skill up their careers. And often this is not, this was never formalized before this professional level 2. So Trailblazers have really clarified what great looks like, but not only for the core services we deliver, but then you have the opportunity to bespoke it down the control room or mobile security patrol, which is helping to build confidence. And that's just absolutely incredible. And Jason's House, our managing director, said it all in his quote, which I'm going to read out here. Said, "I'm not only proud of our apprentices taking command of their career progression, it's also proud of the stakeholders across the industry who've been committed to developing this apprenticeship standard. Before approval of the government funding, like I said, there was nothing. And now we have this, and there was no similar programs in our industry. The people have been committed to this Trailblazer group, have been instrumental in developing opportunities for those wanting to join the security industry. And those of you that know Jason's House, he worked his way up from a frontline point of view. So the hope is that by utilising and leveraging it, not only will we identify, we'll be able to empower and inspire the next Jason's House in our business, and we're hoping that every other organisation, big or small, is going to utilise this opportunity to do the same. And from a learner perspective, which is the next slide, we just wanted to celebrate one of our learners who was in the first cohort. So when we went out to the business with this opportunity, we knew that Trailblazers were onto something because we had over 50 applications in the first week. The response was incredible from our teams, and the detail was one of the successful participants after going through a robust, onboarding process with our learning providers. She was successful, and as a result, her ambition has been unlocked. So Aditya is an experienced security officer, but has never had the opportunity because of her personal life responsibilities to do any formal learning whilst working. But because of the practical and flexible nature of the apprenticeship standard, Aditya has been able to. And what this has resulted around for her personally, it's resulted in building her confidence, empowering her by giving her additional responsibilities, and therefore she's even having more of an impact within the work environment. And that's the power of this apprenticeship standards, because it's really helping people to understand the knowledge, skills and behaviours that they need to move forward in their career. So the Trailblazers the Trailblazing community have really helped to help individuals understand what good looks like, because from an L&D point of view, I always felt very clear that you do this to get to the next point in your career, but when learning about the security industry, it's not that clear. Now with this professional security operative level 2, that is much clearer, and the fact that it's had such a great impact in inception, we're looking forward to seeing how this adapts and molds as we learn and grow with the apprenticeship and implement it further. Thank you. And on that note, I'm going to hand over to James Rockley from Highfield.
Hello, everyone. I'm James Rockley. I'm Business Development Manager from Highfield, and we are an endpoint assessment organisation. And I'm going to take you through the assessments for the Level 2 Professional Security Operative. So on the screen you're looking at the moment, you'll see the assessment journey for the apprentice, starting with the apprentice on programme and running through to gateway, and then the assessments and the issuing of certificates. The assessment consists of an exam, an observation with questions, and a professional discussion. So if we move on to the next slide. This is the process for the gateway meeting. So as has been mentioned before, the gateway process involves a meeting between the learner, their employer, and the training provider to make sure that the apprentice is ready to take the assessments. These assessments can be booked at the time of the meeting, either over the phone or by email, or dates can be discussed and requested when the meeting's over. Though, to be honest with you, booking at the time of the meeting is most straightforward, as you can walk out of that meeting knowing that you've got all of the sessions booked. Following the gateway meeting, the gateway documents are provided to the EPAO, and they're usually provided by the training provider. And these consist of the gateway sign-off document, which effectively confirms that the learner is ready for assessment, and other details such as the pathway the learner is on and how long they've been on programme. Their level 1 maths and English functional skills certificates or equivalent, as mentioned previously, and the emergency first aid certificate or equivalent, such as a first aid certificate or something like that. They will also need to submit a portfolio of evidence that the apprentice has been putting together on programme, and that's to support the element that is the professional discussion. Once the assessments are booked, you'll get a confirmation so that the apprentice, the training provider and the employer will know when they're due to take place, and also where the learner will be for each part of that assessment. Next slide, please. So the assessments themselves, starting with the exam. The exam is a multi-choice assessment, and there are 40 questions, and the apprentice has 60 minutes to complete those questions. The exam can be taken in any suitable environment, so that could be the workplace, or they might be brought into a test centre. They could even take the assessment at home. The invigilation for the exam can be done either in person or using a remote invigilation service. This is why the apprentice can take their assessments at home should they wish. The remote assessment uses the cameras on the learner's laptop or PC, their mobile phone, so the invigilator can see and hear the learner, and they can also see what's on their screen and what's in their environment, so they can ensure that it is exam sufficient. The marks for the multiple choice examination are as follows. So to gain a pass, the apprentice will need to get a minimum of 28 out of 40, and to gain a distinction, they'll need to get a minimum of 36 out of 40. Next slide, please. So moving on to the observation. The observation is conducted over 2 hours, and that's 90 minutes for the observation itself, watching the apprentice perform their day-to-day activities, and 30 minutes for questions. The observation could be split over a couple of areas. So if the learner needs to move from one part of the building to another part, or to a different part of the site, so they can ensure that they can demonstrate all of the outcomes that need to be shown, that's not a problem, and the assessment can be paused. But obviously that's something that needs to be arranged at the point of booking, or at least in advance of the assessment, so we can plan appropriately. So it might be that the learner's moving from front of house and then moving to patrol an area, for example. The observation will need to take place in the apprentice's normal place of work, and the apprentice can prepare for the observation by making notes of things that they will need to do to show that full range of outcomes as the situation allows. They could also give a commentary on the tasks that they're performing, if they're able to at the time. This might indicate standards and protocols in terms of the equipment or processes that are in place. So it might be something along the lines of, I did this because we've got this system that records information in this way. And it also speaks to some of the outcomes that talk about, working in line with organisational procedures and uses security systems and applications and technology to support their security operations. The assessor will ask questions about what they have seen and the actions that the learner took, and what the apprentice might do in situations that didn't occur naturally during the assessment. So, for example, they may be asking questions about what they would do in the case of an emergency, or how to deal with a difficult service user during their shift. To get a pass, the apprentice must achieve all of the pass criteria, and for a distinction, they must achieve all of the distinction criteria, in addition to all of the pass criteria. So moving on to the next slide, please. So the professional discussion. This will usually follow the observation. There will be a little bit of a break between the observation and the professional discussion. This allows the assessor to make notes on the assessment that they've just undertaken, and it also gives the learner a chance to decompress from that element as well. The discussion must take place in a suitable environment, so no interruptions, somewhere quiet. They can even take it online if they would like. The apprentice will have 60 minutes and will be asked a minimum of 8 questions. And these are based on the assessment criteria, but also on the portfolio they've submitted to contextualise the questions. The assessor can ask more than 8 questions. They can ask follow-up questions for clarification, and the employer can be present during this session and can support in that contextualisation for the apprentice, but they can't ask any questions and they certainly can't answer on the apprentice's behalf. Again, with this one, it's to achieve a pass, the learner must achieve all of the pass criteria. To get a distinction, they must pass all of the distinction criteria in addition to the pass criteria. So moving on. The results. Once all of the assessments have taken place, the results will be released a maximum of 12 working days following the last assessment, and this will allow quality assurance to take place. Those marks will fall into various categories. So you'll get a pass, a merit, a distinction, or a fail. To get a pass, the apprentice must have achieved no higher than a pass in 2 or more of the assessments. So if they get 2 passes and a distinction, it's still a pass. For a merit, the learner will need to get 1 pass and 2 distinctions, and for a distinction, it's all 3 elements as a distinction. If the learner fails, that means they failed 1 or more elements during the assessment. And if the learner does need to resit any of the elements, the maximum grade they'll be able to achieve is a pass. So even if they did achieve 2 distinctions and failed 1 element, they will still only be able to get a pass if they have to resit. Just a note on that as well, the apprentice can't resit something with the intention to get a higher grade. So if they've got a pass and they think they could get a distinction next time, sorry, you've got a pass. We have to move on. So in terms of feedback, pass or fail, feedback will be given to you, and it will let you know where the apprentice was strong or perhaps needs more development. There will also be an indication as to further progression for that apprentice. It might be that the assessor suggests a level 3 apprenticeship or some further work the apprentice might like to do. And once the results are released, there'll be a 10-day window for any appeal to be made against those assessment decisions. So, for example, if they have failed and they think they should have passed, then you've got a 10-day window to make that appeal. Likewise, if you passed and you thought you should have got a merit or a distinction. After those 10 days, the certificate will be requested and sent out to the nominated address. This could go to the training provider, it could go to the employer, or indeed it could go directly to the learner. And that is assessment end to end. So I'm now going to hand back to Pauline.
Rookie error, I was on mute. Thank you, James. So we've tried to put together some questions that come up quite regularly. So if I go through these questions and then we'll look at the actual chat as well and respond to any questions that are in there. But there's lots of people that think that the apprenticeship levy pays for the salary of the apprenticeship. So a myth is no, the apprenticeship levy does not pay for the apprenticeship wage. The employer has to pay for the wage. Apprenticeship minimum wage at the moment currently is £5.28 an hour. Lots of employers are opting to pay above this, but you can pay £5.20 an hour for people under 18. If they are 19 or over, they need to be paid the apprenticeship wage for 1 year and then go on to the minimum wage. Lots of people say, why would you have someone on an apprenticeship? You know, you do the SIA license. Does that not qualify you to do the job? Well, yes, it does qualify you to do the job, but like we said before, this is a whole year's programme. It's lots more in depth. It gives you a real understanding of the industry, and it allows you to actually be supported in your first year in the industry. So hopefully it will keep people within the industry and increase the retention. So then members of staff say, so what advantage is it for the industry? Why would we employ someone on an apprenticeship? And hopefully, you know, it will improve retention rates. It'll make the security industry more accessible for school leavers, and hopefully increase the diversity of workplace that we have. So how do I recruit an apprentice? Basically, there's two options really. You can recruit your own staff through your own recruitment methods and then link them with a training provider, or you could get in touch with the training providers. Some of them offer to actually assist you in recruiting, and they will put the advert out onto the apprenticeship website, the national one, and then people can see that you're taking on members of staff to be an apprentice. Annette covered this a little bit. So who can start on the apprenticeship route? It's people who are fairly new to the industry. All the training providers will do what's called a skills scan before people are allowed onto the apprenticeship. And you can't go onto an apprenticeship if you already know everything. So, you know, you need to look, are the people looking at the apprenticeship people who actually already know quite a lot? Maybe a level 2 is not appropriate for them, but this is really appropriate for people who are new or in their first year of the apprenticeship, of working in the industry. Thank you, Dorcas. So Annette again covered this, the maths and English requirement. So have I got this right actually? They must already have achieved a level 2, or is it a level 1? Someone help me out.
I was just unmuting myself. They don't need to have achieved, there's no set requirement to have achieved anything. Yeah. But we'll do a skill scan in the same way as assessing their kind of security knowledge and skills. But they can have no certificates at all. We'll do a skill scan, make sure they're not too far away from the level 1. And then we'll put them on the 1 programme, or potentially the 2 if they've already got their level 1. But if they've achieved it already, they will be exempt. Okay.
And as Jock Wilson's put in the chat, he said presumably the learner will be already on an SIA. They'll already have an SIA licence to be able to get onto the apprenticeship. And he said, so does that mean that they'll be competent in maths and English? The SIA only expects competency in English. So yeah, you are right. If they've got their SIA badge, they should have their level 1 in English, but not necessarily maths. There's a whole big question about off the job hours, and basically the requirement is that everybody is given 6 hours of their own time in work to be able to study and develop themselves. That doesn't necessarily mean that the apprenticeship sits in a corner, does their own portfolio work for 6 hours and you've lost them completely. They can be learning new skills, they can be developing themselves, they can be shadowing other people, they can be attending courses. As long as they are generally developing themselves, it can class as part of the 6 hours for that week, and they need to keep a log of all those hours that they're doing. We covered this before, the apprenticeship pay, the levy pay, it doesn't pay the employee salary, it pays the training costs to the training provider. And somebody else asked in the chat as well, didn't they? It was Kevin Brown asked, what is the maximum funding? The maximum funding for this apprenticeship is £6,000. It may get reduced if people have already got prior knowledge, but it's £6,000 out of your levy pot. And do I need to pay the apprenticeship the minimum pay? No, they're your member of staff. You can pay them what you want, but you do need to at least pay them the minimum apprenticeship wage for the first year that they're on the apprenticeship scheme. Hopefully, we haven't gone too quickly through those myths.
Thank you so much, Pauline. There's a question that we do often get that I think might be really useful for this webinar, because we've got so many employers on the webinar. One of the questions we often do get, and I'll direct this to you, Annette, is that smaller employers often feel that they can't access the apprenticeship because maybe they don't pay into the levy pot. And I think it might be good to address that question in this forum.
Yeah, it is straightforward to access government funding. Your training provider should certainly be able to help you, point you in the right direction to do that. But it's just worth bearing in mind you'll need to pay the minimum amount, which I think was £300, which is 5% of that 6,000. But yeah, it is quite straightforward to access government funding for the balance of that. And if you're not sure where to go, I would say talk to your training provider. We would certainly have people available to help you with it.
Thank you so much, Annette. I've also see that James has got his hand up.
Yeah, sorry about that. I just wanted to clarify a couple of points that Pauline made, because I think it's important to recognise the result of some of the questions that were asked. So I just picked up on the English and maths question. So it's certainly not a requirement to come on to programme with those, but it definitely is needed at Gateway in terms of sign off, which is why Annette would enrol somebody on the functional skills. And the comparison with the SIA licensable qualifications, you don't necessarily have to have a framework qualification for the SIA licensable, but you will need to have it for the apprenticeship. So even though they will have done some sort of English assessment to do their SIA licensable, that's not usually a framework qualification. So you would need to have a framework qualification to come onto the gateway stage of the apprenticeship. So it would necessarily need to be functional skills level 1 or a framework equivalent. The other thing as well is there may be some wiggle room in terms of if the learner is in post but changing roles within that organisation. So they may well be working in the security industry already, but there may be a bit of wiggle room in terms of, completely changing the job role. So they've applied for a job within the same organisation. It's a completely different role. They may be able to come onto the apprenticeship. So it's not necessarily everybody that's just starting. I just thought that was a point to make. That's all.
Thank you very much, James. I do have another question in the chat that Annette, you might be able to help us to answer this. Annette or Pauline might be able to answer this question. Kelly Simmons is wondering, does the apprentice already need to hold an SIA license?
I think that might be, they don't need to already hold it, is the first answer really for that. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Pauline, because some people some people will hold it or do want to go through it first, but they don't have to hold it to go on to the apprenticeship.
My understanding, but I might be wrong, is they need to be in position, because to be able to do this apprenticeship, you need to actually be in a job, and most employers require people to have their SIA license. So if you can't do your job without an SIA license, you need to have the SIA license. But there are wiggle rooms around that. It's like if you have internal security staff, then you don't need an SIA license, or there may be some roles that you don't need an SIA license, but you can still actually actively go on to the apprenticeship.
Thank you, Annette and Pauline. I think you're right. I think with the apprenticeship, if the apprentice will be doing licensable activity whilst, in their job role, whilst completing their apprentice, they will need to have the SIA license, as you've mentioned. And again, like you said, some organisations are in-house where, they don't have to have the SIA license, but they can still, be able to access the apprenticeship. I'm just going to open it up to anybody who may have some more questions. Okay, we've got a few more questions coming in. So Richard Simpson is asking, could we use this to upskill our event stewards?
I don't know, I could throw a few ideas in there. It would depend how many hours they were working. That might be a consideration. and it will really depend on what else could be perhaps added to their job role and so on. So it's kind of ticking all of the boxes for all of the core job skills and one of the other one. So it depends how broad the role is, and that's one of the reasons we do a skill scan to begin with, so we match the job role to the apprenticeship, and then maybe some moving around that we can do with the employer to help them match somebody into that. Difficult to answer that one with a yes or no, really.
Yeah, it really does depend on the individual. So the roles that they're performing, they would need to be able to demonstrate all of the outcomes within the standard. So the rule of thumb will be to have a look at the standard, the knowledge, skills, behaviours, and if that sounds like that person, then chances are they would be able to pick up on the apprenticeship. I realise that, you know, stewarding and security is kind of there's a blur between the two roles. And I think that there's an opportunity there for stewarding staff as well, because many of them are performing security roles as well.
Thank you both. The next question is from, it says control, and it says, is there a list of training providers supporting this?
That's on the apprenticeship standards website. If you click through from the PSO level 2, you will see all the different training providers. I think last time I did that, there were 6 different training providers.
Yep, that is correct. So there are 6 training providers supporting the apprenticeship currently. And if you go onto the IFATE website and search for the professional security operative level 2, you'll be able to find the list of the providers supporting on that site.
I think somebody's dropped the link into the chat as well, so you could have a look there.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next question. I'm not sure if this is just confirming your understanding, Kelly Simmons. It ends with a question, so I'm wondering if it is a question. I know some companies use in-house officers and no licenses required. However, they are doing the role, so they would be suitable candidates. And yeah.
Same rules apply. If they are doing the knowledge, if they're able to meet the knowledge, skills and behaviours within the standard, then there's no reason why they can't go on to the programme.
Okay, thank you very much, James. So the next question from Julie Earls. Can the apprentice apply for a license once they complete their apprenticeship without then going on the level 2 award in working as a security officer in the private security industry?
Definitely not. It's a prerequisite of license to have that qualification.
Thank you, James.
The only time they would not need that license is if they were working internal. Yeah.
Thank you, Pauline. The next question from Asim Malik is, what is the procedure for employer to apply for apprenticeship for existing employees or new recruiters?
Okay, well, within Securitas, it would be either the recruitment team or the training team. So it depends on your organisation who it is who links the training for your staff.
Yeah. We've got one last question which we can send an answer to Deepan about that. I think that requires just a little bit more fleshing out to be able to provide you with a very clear answer for your question. And I don't know if anybody's got any further questions.
There was one, Dorcas, further up. It came in really early. About physical intervention. Is physical intervention part of the training module? Annette, can you answer that?
I don't think it is. Is it, James?
No, physical intervention isn't part of this particular apprenticeship, because that's picked up in the license to practice. So if they need physical intervention, they can do it as part of their license to practice under a door supervisor qualification or as a standalone if they're working as a security officer.
Thank you. Okay, this is from Hafiz Mahmood. I'm reaching out to inquire about the procedure for employers to apply for apprenticeship, both for existing employers and new recruits. Could you provide information on the steps involved, necessary documentation, and specific requirements for the application process? We are exploring apprenticeship opportunities within our organisation and we would appreciate your guidance in this matter.
I might be able to answer that one. I think it's similar to the previous question in a way. So once whoever in the employer is in control of that, they'd contact a training provider and get an agreement together, and then the training provider will help them with all of the paperwork that's required from there. Additionally, if they need help with accessing funds, training provider can normally do that. Show them, it's quite straightforward. So once you've sort of shown once or twice, you know what to do. But really, yeah, once you've decided, yes, this is what we want, these are the people we want on the programme, contact the training provider and they'll help you with all the paperwork, I would say is the easiest way.
Thank you, Annette. We've got another question, again, similar to some of the earlier ones about having a SIA license if you don't have one and being an apprenticeship. I guess it's the similar answers, and I'll let Pauline do this one.
Okay, so because the apprenticeship, you've got to actually be in the role doing the things, because the training provider will come out and actually want to watch you doing things. So to be able to do things, you need to have the SIA license. You can't be doing things if you're not licensed. The only difference to that is that you're internal employed. If you're internal employed and you're able to do all the things that are on the apprenticeship standards, then you don't need to have that license. Does that make sense?
Thank you very much, Pauline. Yes, it does.
Okay.
I think it's time to just say thank you to our speakers. It's been a very informative session. As mentioned earlier, this will be a recorded webinar and it will be placed on the level 2 professional security operative apprenticeship campaign site. All further questions will be answered via email. We will keep an eye on the comment section and address the questions that have not been addressed during the webinar. We thank everybody who's been able to engage with the webinar today, and we hope everybody has been able to gather and gain something from the speakers. You are welcome to access the campaign site to watch this over again once it has been uploaded on there, and also to share with colleagues and contacts who you think this might benefit. Thanks again to the speakers, and thanks everybody for attending.